A lake on the Texas-Mexico border has become a warning sign for an entire region. Falcon Lake, one of the largest reservoirs in South Texas, is sitting at a fraction of the level it was designed to hold. Shorelines that were once underwater now stretch into the distance. Boat ramps end far from the water. Exposed mud flats cover areas that used to support recreation, fishing, and local businesses. But this story is not only about drought. It is also about a river, an international agreement, and a growing struggle over who gets access to water when supplies become scarce. For the communities that depend on Falcon Lake, the consequences are already visible. Farmers are reducing production. Businesses are facing uncertainty. And some residents are wondering how much lower the reservoir can go before the situation becomes far more serious. To understand why, we have to go back decades. In the middle of the 20th century, the United States and Mexico signed an agreement governing the use of water along parts of their shared border. The goal was simple. Both countries relied on the same river systems, and both needed a framework for sharing those resources. Over the years, that agreement became one of the most important water arrangements in North America. When rainfall was plentiful, the system generally worked. But water agreements are easiest to manage when there is enough water for everyone. The real test comes during prolonged drought. And that is exactly what has happened across large parts of the region. Several years of dry conditions have reduced inflows into reservoirs, lowered river levels, and increased pressure on farmers, cities, and industries that depend on reliable water supplies. Falcon Lake has been caught in the middle of that pressure. The reservoir sits directly on the international border. Water levels depend on rainfall, river inflows, upstream management decisions, and demand from both sides. When those factors move in the wrong direction at the same time, the lake can fall quickly. That is what many residents have witnessed in recent years. The effects extend far beyond the shoreline. Agriculture is among the first sectors to feel the impact. Growing crops requires planting months or even years in advance. When water becomes uncertain, growers must make difficult choices. Some reduce planting, others leave fields unused, and long-term investments become much harder to justify. Fruit growers face a particularly difficult situation. Trees take years to mature. Planting an orchard is a commitment that may not produce full returns for a decade or more. Without confidence in future water supplies, many producers hesitate to expand operations. The result is a gradual slowdown that can affect entire local economies. And those impacts add up. Agriculture supports jobs throughout the supply chain. Workers in packing facilities, transportation companies, equipment services, and processing plants all depend on successful harvests. When production falls, the consequences spread far beyond individual farms. Communities across the region have already felt that pressure. Local leaders have repeatedly warned that water shortages are becoming more than an environmental issue. They are becoming an economic issue. They are becoming a planning issue. And increasingly, they are becoming a political issue. Because when a reservoir shared by two countries declines, questions inevitably follow. How much of the problem is drought? How much is demand? And how much is connected to the management of water flowing through the basin? Those questions have fueled years of debate. Officials on both sides of the border point to the challenges created by extreme weather. Periods of unusually low rainfall have affected large areas of northern Mexico and South Texas. At the same time, growing populations and agricultural demand continue to place pressure on limited resources. That combination creates a difficult reality. Everyone needs water, yet there is less water available to distribute. The challenge becomes even greater when reservoirs remain low for extended periods. A temporary shortage can often be managed. A long-term shortage is much harder. As water levels decline, operational problems begin to appear. Sediment becomes a larger concern. Infrastructure built for higher water levels may require adjustments. Pumping systems can face additional strain, and local governments may need to invest in emergency measures to maintain reliable access to water. These are not the kinds of projects most communities plan for, but they are becoming increasingly important in drought-prone regions. Meanwhile, the lake itself continues to lose water through evaporation. South Texas experiences intense summer heat. Large reservoirs exposed to months of high temperatures can lose enormous volumes of water to the atmosphere. As water levels drop, some areas become shallower, creating conditions that can accelerate losses even further. Every gallon that disappears adds pressure to an already stressed system. For many residents, however, the most frustrating aspect is uncertainty. People can adapt to difficult conditions when they know what to expect. What becomes much harder is planning for a future that remains unclear. Will rainfall return? Will reservoir levels recover? Will future agreements and management decisions stabilize supplies? Those questions remain unanswered. What is clear is that Falcon Lake has become a symbol of a much larger challenge. Around the world, water resources are under growing pressure from population growth, agricultural demand, and changing climate patterns. Regions that once assumed reliable supplies are discovering that water security cannot be taken for granted. The Texas-Mexico border is one example, but it is far from the only one. The situation at Falcon Lake serves as a reminder that modern societies depend on infrastructure and agreements that many people rarely think about. Most people turn on a tap and expect water to appear. Few consider the reservoirs, rivers, pumps, pipelines, and international arrangements that make that possible. Until something goes wrong. And when something does go wrong, the effects can reach entire communities. Today, Falcon Lake remains far below the levels many residents would like to see. Farmers continue to watch conditions closely. Officials continue searching for solutions. And local communities continue hoping for relief. The future of the reservoir will depend on rainfall, water management, and decisions made on both sides of the border. But one thing is already certain. Falcon Lake is no longer just a lake. It has become a warning about what happens when a critical water supply faces years of pressure with no easy solution in sight.